Yasmin,
Yes, sir.
are you able to hear us?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay.
Hello. Hello.
A very good evening, Kamal Bali, sir. We would be
Good
starting the session in 5 minutes, sir.
Yeah, sure. Am I audible there?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'll come back after 5 minutes, okay?
Sure, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Gurpreet Bagnal, and I will be your MC for today. And I'll also be joined by Mr. Sebin Joseph and Miss Yasmin. So we welcome the founder of Zyme Bangalore and chairman of Zyme Bangalore, Dr. Professor J. Philip, um, the president of Zyme, Mr. Anil J. Philip, and the director of Zyme Bangalore, Dr. Niliappan, the dean academics, Professor Madhu Kumar. Our esteemed speakers for the day have joined us online through Zoom, and we welcome Dean Academics, faculty, and students of Zyme from all the campuses. So, this evening's event, COVID the Innovation Imperative, is in partnership with BCIC to learn and understand how some of the organizations from different sectors have come with new approaches to successfully tide over the COVID challenges and bring out the new innovation imperatives. So, I would now like to invite Professor C.V. Ravindranathan, Chairman Zyme Kochi, to moderate the panel discussion for this evening. Audience, please note, you can post your questions in the Q&A section of the chat box, and we will discuss them at the end of the session.
Founder of XIME and chairman of XIME Bangalore, Professor J. Philip, distinguished panelists, dear colleagues of the faculty and students. I have great pleasure to welcome the distinguished panelists of this webinar, Mr. Kamal Bali, President and MD, Volvo Group, Mr. Biju Kurian, former President and Chief Executive of Lifestyle Reliance Retail, and now consultant, and Professor G.V.K. Raju, Vice Chancellor, JNT UK. Each of them, by virtue of their expertise and career accomplishments, is aptly positioned to address with competence various aspects of the topic COVID, the innovation imperative. This is the second installment of the exploration of this theme that we are attempting at XIME in partnership with BCCI. Featuring in it today are the broad sectors of manufacturing, distribution, and higher education. The first one, the first installment last month was on the 30th of March, and it had its focus on IT, hospitality, healthcare, and pharma industry. The next one, the third and final, scheduled for April 13, will consider banking and finance, infrastructure, and energy. Now, Professor Drucker, Peter Drucker, had famously defined innovation as the effort to create purposeful, focused change in an enterprise's economic or social potential. The growth theorist Robert Solow, in his model, had seen innovation as manna from heaven, something that policymakers cannot really influence. But this assumption that policymakers cannot really influence innovation has since been put aside in the face of empirical evidence to the contrary. The prevailing view is that a whole range of variables does influence innovation. These variables include such factors as openness to trade and investment, spending on R&D, skill levels, and buoyant markets for risk-taking and enterprise. Giving accumulation of human capital and knowledge the pride of place in the engine of growth. Now, it is against this background that the contextual conditions arising from COVID-19 since March 2020 should be seen in interface with innovation. Innovation has several attributes in this interface. It is a shield against the exogenous shock of the pandemic. It is both a challenge and an opportunity. It's a tremendous change agent. It is an accelerator and enabler. There is a saying that a boulder placed in a strategic position can change the course of a river. There is reason to believe that COVID-19, in its arguably redeeming aspect, may be seen by the future as having performed such a role. Referring again to Drucker, he does believe that unexpected occurrences top the list of opportunities for innovation. Now, COVID-19, than which there has never been a more unforeseen and more intractable social and human health disruption, certainly fills the bill for it. Now, over 2 years into the COVID-19 related turbulence and upheavals in societies, states, economies, and businesses, we can see innovations across a vast front, both as outcomes that could not be helped and that would need to be pursued in the future. These are visible at the apex, at the level of governments and public systems, in the way the prolonged public health and welfare crisis was dealt with in India. Something like a microcosm is the emergence of the one-step platform for citizen services on the government's unified mobile application for new age governance, which you'd have heard about, Umang. Across India's phenomenal record in corona vaccinations and all the operations connected with it is also a story of innovations, which will indeed run in full flow into the future, with many systemic changes resulting from the process. On the front of organizational behavior in business and industry, innovations touch a wide area from job design and socio-technical systems in HR management to communication and operations. And in lockstep with technology, notably the digital, there will be more of the same in the future. Remote work that had been foreseen and theorized about as part of the evolution of the labor market in the present era of Industry 4.0 has already become a significant reality today, with innovative HR practices and approaches to team building and dynamics, and to optimum team performance at the hybrid and virtual level. In the manufacturing sector, innovations have already traversed and will evidently traverse in increasing measure through the channels of automation, IoT, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, along with unswerving adherence to ESG. Make no mistake about it, because we cannot ignore the compelling demands of environment, society, and governance in the days to come. In marketing, it is not just the consumer shift in behavior as indicated by the all-pervasive nature online businesses. But something like brand management, about which we talk a lot in business schools, the heart of marketing, has been today quintessentially transformed by the mass medium of the internet, generating such precise understanding about every individual that, as somebody said, the brand now is having to listen rather than to speak. And the brand has to orient itself completely to navigate this new world. And in education, the proliferation of online education providers, as well as the upgrading of the capabilities of online education, represents another area of pace-setting innovation, with the internet being utilized in its most impactful form in that sector. Much as the strides in science and technology have been the prime and fruitful source of these innovations in multiple domains, the process has undergone a radically hastened evolution owing to the somber reign of COVID-19 over our lives these last 2 years. That's what one can say, as I do, in a high-flying bird's eye view of the scene, surveying the broad lay of the land in terms of innovations in the COVID context. We may indeed expect to hear more about how the process itself will actually pan out in specific areas and details from the panelists. So with that note, by way of introduction, let me now step aside and let the panelists get on board. Now, may I request Mr. Kamal Bali to commence the session with his presentation centered on manufacturing industry. Mr. Kamal
Thank
Bali.
you. Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Philip, Ambassador Ravindranath, my co-panelist, Mr. Biju Korean, and Dr. Prasad Raju, and my student friends, audience. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. In fact, it's always a pleasure to be part of Zyme events, and I'm sorry I could not participate in person as I'm in Chennai, but it's a pleasure to be here along with you. I think the topic on innovation imperative is very, very timely, and I think it has taken center stage across sectors of Indian economy. And all of this is not only because of COVID, and I will come back to this in a minute. Friends, the world as well as India is at crossroads of change. At one level, and in fact, it's quite paradoxical change what we see. At one level, we have impending challenges as a result of climate change, polluting and congested cities, resource scarcity, geopolitical challenges. And at the other end, we are facing and being presented with boundless opportunities arising from emerging technologies, alternate energy carriers, AI, machine learning, and system-wide digitization of the world where we live in, where everything can be connected and understand each other much better. Therefore, it is my belief that the bridge that will help us to deploy and leverage the opportunities I mentioned to overcome the challenges that lie before us will be the trinity of three elements, which is purpose, innovation, and collaboration. And I think that is going to be the key. Innovation backed by business transformation. Friends, the imperative of innovation, therefore, in business and society may not be all because of COVID, but one thing is for certain, as Professor Ravindranath, as Ambassador Ravindranath alluded to, that the pandemic has accelerated change, a change within months and weeks, which would have taken some few years or probably a decade. This implies that business has had to reorient and transform themselves. The mantra being responsiveness, rapidness, and resilience. I will share with you few trends which we are seeing as a consequence of various factors playing out over the last few, I would say, maybe the last 700, 800 days. Number one, e-commerce, telehealth, online learning, online streaming has accelerated in months to a level that would have taken probably years. E-commerce today is surging to 2030 levels what were anticipated earlier. The voluminous increase on online engagement has now made cybersecurity a key concern. Second, the pandemic created a worldwide appreciation of the importance of environment and sustainability and the importance of operating within the boundaries of the planet. And I think this is something, again, which Ambassador Ravindranath alluded to. 100 nations have committed to net zero targets as well as intermittent targets. 1/5 of the world's largest corporates have set these targets, though with different calculation of the parameters. Number three, geopolitics is impacting supply chains and logistics in a big way. Now, this is industry is therefore working to reduce supply chain dependency and increase the transparency and visibility. And I will come back to this in a minute because this is opening up a huge opportunity for India. Number four, this is also a period that India has upped its focus on emerging technologies, especially electromobility, the hydrogen mission, logistics with global ambitions. Number five, the workplace is getting refined too. You can work from anywhere, anytime, and anyone can do anything he or she wishes to. And finally, national interest is increasingly becoming paramount. More and more we are seeing the nationalist interest instead of globalization, which we were always expecting that it will continue. I think globalization has taken a little bit of a backseat, and a little bit more of regionalization is happening a little more. But I believe we are moving into an age of accelerated innovation. And there are some key reasons, 4 reasons why I say so. First, we have a clear challenge ahead of us. The world is united in the concerns that face us globally. We are dissatisfied, and that is one key driver that gives birth to new ideas. And this has a bearing on our readiness to give up old methods and adopt alternate routes. So this is something very, very clear, the compelling need, the compelling challenges which we face on hand. Number 2, innovation takes place best when obstacles that lies between ideation to action, the gap between ideation to action is minimized. As you already see today, there is a huge propensity to finance and accept new ideas across the world. Even if our solutions are in the nascent stage of development, there are people who are willing to fund you. This was not true maybe a decade ago. So I think that's something very, very good, that the obstacles between ideation to action are reducing dramatically compared to 5 or 6 years ago. Number 3, innovation and ideas generate faster when we can gain insight of very, very objective insights, so to say. And today, this is being enabled by the ability to generate, share, and exchange massive data across systems and processes, where we have tools to analyze data, identify waste, opportunities to optimize. So, and I think this is something which is unique, which is happening, that in quickly and real time, we can have insights to data. And earlier we were struggling to get, we were working on anecdotal evidences many times. Today, we have hard data to rely upon. So that's another thing which is helping us to innovate much, much faster. Finally, the 4th point in innovation is also fueled when we cross-fertilize ideas across domains. Now, this is something very important. If you continue to work in one area, you will get more of the same. So when you need to innovate, you need to go outside your domain. And this is being caused, and this is being helped by collaboration and partnerships. something which is increasingly taking place across the world and in India. You'll be surprised that IT companies are collaborating with automotive companies. Competitors are collaborating. Let me give you our own example. I mean, two competitors like Volvo and Daimler, which are one of the largest competitors in the automotive world, are today collaborating on the hydrogen fuel cell technology. Large organizations are co-creating with startups. And this is, my friends, is going to be the new norm. The borders that separated industry types will get increasingly blurred as everyone starts calling them technology organizations. Friends, I think almost all of us will need to navigate an organization-wide business transformation, which is mandated by several challenges and the sustainability which Ambassador alluded to on ESG on one end, and fueled by emerging technologies and innovation on the other end. So in a way, the stars are aligning. On one end, you have compelling challenges, and on the other end, you have some of the tools to solve those challenges or to help remove those challenges, and innovation is driving some of them. I will come to that, but I think for now, I will stop by saying that the factors that will drive innovation, which is driving innovation, I believe there are 6 or 7 factors which are driving innovation in a big way. I think one is the era of collaboration and partnership. I think this is something which we are seeing very, very dramatically happening. The second is commitment to sustainability. Earlier, sustainability used to be lip service. Today, unless until you can demonstrate sustainable actions, whether it is environment, whether it is society, whether it is economic efficiency, or if it is ethical ways of working, unless you can demonstrate, you will not be able to succeed, because organizations are also being viewed as human beings, as something which is supposed to be very, very responsible. I think the fourth is very, very clearly building a continuous learning organization. And that is really the root cause of change, which we are noticing today. And I think and organizations with higher purpose and an organization that is responsible is so that we remain socially relevant and always inclusive. I think these are the factors, in addition to technology, which is of course aiding innovation in a very, very big way. Some of the societal imperatives, some of the lens which people are using after COVID is something very, very different. People have come to realize that there are other things in the world other than just the economic excellence. So I think with all of this, innovation is going to play a key role. I will stop here. I will come back for any other reflections subsequent to this. Back to you, Ambassador Ravindranath.
In your remarks, you have illuminated the whole landscape relating to the changes, or what we call changes as collectively as innovation. The scope and the range of innovation so far, we have been able to capture in highlighting some of the major features which characterize the present situation in relation to innovation. Particularly your emphasis that collaboration and partnership across industries is a defining feature of the present setup. That is certainly a hopeful feature which will make for innovation on a large scale. And sustainability, commitment to it is again something which is at the center of the process of innovation underway today. Because there But on the whole,
Excuse me, sir, the mic is on.
there's no optimistic one. Strike the right note. Then I'll move on to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the discerning session that we had. We are so delightful to hear from the alumnus of IIT Roorkee. So next up, we have Biju Kurian, former president and chief executive, Lifestyle Reliance Retail. He has been associated with marque brands in the fast-moving consumer products, consumer durables, and retail industry in over 34 years. So in his stint with Reliance Retail, he was at the forefront of the most ambitious retail ventures ever, which dramatically transformed the Indian retail landscape. Currently, he is an independent consultant and member of the Strategic Advisory Board of L. Catterton Asia, a part of the LVMH Group, an independent director on several listed and unlisted companies, advises select consumer product companies, and mentors a few startups also. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If somebody could just disable the or rather enable the video, that'd be good, because it says the host has disabled it. Great. So while somebody gets down to doing, yeah. Thank you very much once again. Thank you, Ambassador Ravindranath, Professor Philip, Anil Philip, Mr. Kamal Bali, Mr. GVR Prasad Raju, staff members and students at the institute. It was a little less than 2 years back. That we actually saw. Thanks, Kamal, for that warning. I hope it's much better now. That we actually saw the government of India introduce a lockdown. When this lockdown was announced, all of us were caught by surprise. We were told that we had to remain in our homes and not go out. All forms of economic activity were closed. Stores were closed, offices were closed, government or private, factories were closed, educational institutions were closed. But people needed to survive. They had to fend for themselves in terms of food. They had to fend for themselves in terms of medicines. So what they ended up doing was, if they could not go to a store, they actually decided to get the store to come to their homes. As Ambassador Ravindranath had mentioned earlier, and echoed also by Kamal Bali, the business of online companies catapulted, and it grew more than 5 to 6 times. Some of them who are in the online grocery space had to actually defer deliveries for 5 to 6 days because they could not control the surge of orders that they were experiencing. That was the spark that ignited the online commerce boom. And what we've been seeing after that is that online commerce is now spread to every category of retail. If you look at clothing, if you look at electronics, if you look at pharmacy, if you look at food and grocery, if you look at fashion, in all of these categories, you will see that online has gained quite rapidly over the last 2 years. But just online by itself is not enough. And what we are seeing is that while companies transform to convert their channels of sale from physical to digital, we're also seeing that the digital interaction with the customer is leading to transformation in the processes which are there within all of these companies. So there is a whole accompanying digital transformation activity which is happening within each of these companies, spurred by the fact that they are actually connecting digitally with the customer. So whether it's in terms of payments, whether it is in terms of creating digital content of their catalogs, whether it is in terms of the interaction with the customers in terms of analytics, all of these are today undergoing digital transformation. And when the customer is interacting digitally with you, how can you actually advertise physically? So what we've also seen over the last 2 years is the change in the advertising strategy of almost all these companies. So from digital advertising being a mere 10% of their advertising budgets, it's today grown to a level of between 40 to 60% of the advertising budget. And that is being done because companies are realizing that customers are spending a lot more time digitally. And the customers are spending time digitally because they are figuring out that a lot more of their life is actually happening on screen rather than in a physical environment. If a customer works in an office, they're working from home. If a student is studying in a physical school, they're studying from home. If earlier we used to go to a theater to watch a movie, today we're watching it online. And because our lives have changed dramatically in the way that we have embraced as customers the digital technologies that surround us, each category that is there has started to follow the customer very carefully. So cinema producers are today producing content and releasing it simultaneously, both in theaters and online. Teachers today are comfortable being able to educate children online and offline. So you have the concept of a hybrid class. You have assignments which are handed out, which the child actually concludes at home using digital technologies. So there are several ways in which we are seeing that digital technology, which has permeated our lives in the last 2 years, is now beginning to actually stay in our own lives. If you look at what's happened in a simple category like food, what we are seeing in a category like food is that initially we had difficulty accessing grocery from the stores. Once we started getting grocery items, we realized that with domestic help not being able to come in, we were forced to be able to actually cook ourselves in our own homes. And that caught a lot of us by surprise. We were forced to clean our own homes, which also caught a lot of us by surprise. So a lot of time-saving tricks and devices were found. So you used to get robots to be able to vacuum and clean your homes. Restaurants which could not open their doors but could do delivery actually started creating meal kits which the customer could buy and prepare the meal in the house from a kit prepared in a restaurant. So there was a satisfaction of having cooked the meal yourself while not going through the chore of preparing the ingredients. What we've also seen is that the ready to cook and the ready to eat categories have grown quite rapidly. And that is because customers wanted to find time saving solutions. Or sometimes the complications around preparing from scratch were so high that they preferred to get semi-prepared food, which they could complete cooking at home. Look at a category like fashion and what happened to that. If you were confined to your home and did not need to leave it either for work or for study, obviously your wardrobe changed. People then started investing in what you might define as loungewear, as opposed to using their formal wear. Shoes gave way to sandals. And those who used to, meticulously shave every day decide to grow beards, because they all felt comfortable that in their homes they didn't need to dress up in order to study or to be able to work. If you look at a category like electronics, suddenly the house became the electronics hub. Connectivity became very critical. Normally, a child would go to school or a parent would go to the office to work, and the connectivity would be the responsibility of the school or the office. Suddenly, it became the responsibility of the house. Everybody needed connectivity devices. Internet connections had to be upgraded in terms of quality and bandwidth. So these were some of the subtle changes that crept into our lives. Many of us invested in UPSs for almost every instrument, given the fickle electric supply that all of us experience in our homes. So when you really think about it, what you do realize is that there are several ways in which these changes of working from home or studying from home have actually led to the investments that we make within our home. When you have the entire household staying within the house, as opposed to most of them coming back only at night, then what happens is that the house suddenly seems to be a bit limiting. So those who were occupying 2-bedroom apartments decided to upgrade to 3-bedroom. Many went back to their hometowns in order to be able to enjoy the better quality of life that they could see there. Many of them mothballed their cars, which they wouldn't take out of the garage. So what you did see in these situations is that these lifestyle changes that happened. Today, for a technology company to be able to get an employee to come back to the office is a difficult task, because for 2 years they have worked from home. They've managed to be as productive, if not slightly better, while working from home. And when you tell them that they need to now spend 3 hours a day commuting to their workplace and back, they all begin to question why. And companies have a difficult choice to make and difficult solutions to provide, because from a credible perspective, productivity has not suffered. IT companies have actually done better in terms of performance and profitability. So what economic argument can you give an employee to say, come back to an office, other than the simple reason that that is what we used to always do? So as Mr. Kamal Bali said, it is also an era of collaboration and cooperation rather than competition. What has happened is new startups and some of the older which are already in the technology space have begun to become strong enablers of businesses. And as they become strong enablers of businesses, today businesses have realized that it is so much simpler to focus on the core rather than to do everything yourself. So if I were to be an online commerce player today, all I need to do is to invest in the products. All I need to do is to make sure that I find the right partner whose warehouse I can store it in, find the right partner who can deliver it to me, to my customers. There are enough SaaS solutions available today which will help me to digitize the product in terms of content, and to be able to create websites, and to be able to interact with the customer. And I have several UPI systems which will allow me to collect money from the customer. So coming to think of it, if I'm an online store, the only thing that I need to do is to make sure I understand my customer well, use the information that I have of my customer, and to be able to decide what kind of products that I need to buy and keep for my customer. Everything else can work through a cooperative model. Supply chains came into question. When we all went into COVID, factories were shut. So even if the government initially allowed a store to open, there was no way they could be replenished because the companies which were making the products which are required in the stores were all shut. So that ended in a situation where the supply chains came under question. Imports were not possible. There was the China challenge, which also existed. So all supply chains had to be reviewed and new things to be done in terms of mitigating the risk that we had from a global supply chain. Today, when you look at what we've all experienced, what we are seeing is that all these changes, and all of them enabled by the digital transformation that happened over the last 2 years, have left all of us with certain behaviors. These behaviors are not likely to go away in a hurry. If there is a focus on health and safety today, driven by COVID, that focus will continue even after we get beyond the pandemic. If there is a certain way in which we are able to interact, whether it means less travel, whether it means less moving around within a city, then that focus will not change because we've understood and appreciate the value that that is able to create for us in terms of the time that we have to spend less on the road. If a child today has learned that it is possible to have a hybrid state of education, then a school would be foolish to insist that the child come back to school every day because the child has already sampled the pleasures of being able to study from home. Anticipate and see in the future, driven by the changes we made to our lifestyle and driven by the changes in our behavior, is the fact that the world of tomorrow will be very different. What will it mean? Will it mean that we won't have offices? Probably not. Will it mean that the same mode of education will continue? Probably not. Will it mean that we will not actually have the same jobs that we used to do in the past? Probably yes. Because what we will have is a situation where some of the jobs which tend to be repetitive, which are automated, will actually get robotized. There will be work that is done in terms of analytics, which will remove a whole bunch of people who would otherwise have typically spent time in an office analyzing data. Some of the areas that probably will continue to remain the same will be, say, for example, healthcare. Technology will continue to remain the same because technology is today a very, very key driver of all the changes that have happened in the last 2 years, and in the future will continue to become an increasingly larger driver of changes that are going to happen. So when we think about the future and think about what we can anticipate in the rest of 2022 and in the years ahead, remember that we've experienced a different lifestyle in the past. It is quite difficult for us to imagine that we will go back to what we were doing prior to 2020. It's quite likely that we will settle in a mode which is between what we've done in the past and what we've experienced over the last 2 years. But certainly, technology has driven permanent changes in our lives, which we will not be able to escape. These are some of the thoughts that I wanted to share with you. And I'm very, very happy to be able to answer any questions that might come across at the end of the session. So thank you very much for hearing me out. Over to you, Ambassador Ravindranath.
Thank you so much, sir, for an extremely insightful session. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yeah.
A very warm evening to all the panel members present. So my question is, with pandemic bringing in the necessity of digitalization and increase in adaptability to these digital mediums, how important is rapid innovation for businesses to help acclimatize themselves to these quick changes in consumer comforts?
Is that addressed to me?
Yes, sir, that's the question for you.
Sure. Thank you. You see, what we have seen is change is happening at warp speed today. It is not at the slow pace that we were used to in the past. And if you look at the sprint and agile methodology that is today being used by technology companies, those are the same methodologies that we will need to adopt in our own lives. We will need to adopt also in the companies that we run and in the businesses that we operate. We have to remember that customers will change. We have to remember that they will change quite rapidly. And in the context of that, innovation is going to be a continuous driver. And innovation cannot take the languid pace that we've had in the past. Innovation has to be in short bursts. Innovation has to be quick. And these quick, short bursts of innovation will build upon each other in order to be able to create the change. So some of us might not realize it, but what we will see is that we will see in every area innovation happening quite rapidly and in short bursts. Let me take, for example, the mobile technology space. And what we are seeing in mobile technology, we think of it as huge paradigm shifts from, say, 4G to 5G. But if you look at instruments today, what we are seeing in instruments today is over a year, the disk or the storage capacity of a mobile phone almost doubles at the same price. That is a rapid innovation that we are seeing in just one industry. And that's the same thing which is happening in several industries. So be prepared for rapid change.
Absolutely. I completely echo that. Yeah.
So the next question is from one of our professors, Professor Anant Raman. So his question is that most telling impact of the COVID is that it has proved the irrelevance and wastefulness of one link of the value chain, transportation. Increasingly, customer will not transport himself to reach the product, but the product will have to find and reach him. For instance, online learning in the education industry and online meetings and conferences elsewhere are here to stay long after COVID is gone. What other permanent changes you expect in your respective business models?
Let me, Mr. Kurian, if you permit, I can just take.
No, please, Mr. Bali, go ahead.
Yeah, the initial, one part, I think logistics, as you rightly alluded to, logistics is going to see a huge change going forward. Let me touch upon some of the aspects of logistics today, So, the future of mobility is going to be very different from what you see today. There is going to be multimodal, interoperable transport concepts which are going to come in and which is going to be used and kind of a model. I think that's one. But I think more importantly, logistics is going to be divided into two parts. One is hub-to-hub logistics, and other one is the last mile connectivity. And these are going to be two very, very different things. When it comes to hub-to-hub logistics, today the efficiency levels globally are below 50%, which means that almost 50% of the time, a truck or any other hub-to-hub movement vehicle is actually moving air. It is not moving cargo. So therefore, there's a 50% inefficiency in the system in terms of hub-to-hub transport. Therefore, the concept of, therefore, a lot of automation, connectivity to optimize the cargo, to optimize the loads, so that we can start moving about 80 to 90% of cargo instead of less than 50% cargo at any point in time. So that's going to be one major innovation. And remember, whenever you can monetize any waste, and right now that 50% is that waste in the system, if you can monetize even 20 to 30% of that waste through certain actions, through digitization, through the elements of aggregation, cargo route planning and other things, thanks to a lot of data and digitization, you can actually monetize that and start a new completely new economics there as well. So I think that's one. The second part is the last mile connectivity. Here also you're going to see a tremendous amount of change, and this change you will see the drones doing the last mile delivery, and all of these, depending on the regulatory norms, I think you can be ready to see very, very different last mile delivery. And as we all alluded to in the beginning of the kind of lifestyle changes which are leading to product coming to the consumer. So this is going to catch a lot of traction in the days ahead. And let me also explain to you that in India, this is going to be even more. The reason being that our own logistics cost today are about 14% of GDP, whereas the global logistics cost is about 9% of GDP, of respective GDPs, which means there is already 5% of GDP in terms of, if you look at our GDP at say $3 trillion, so almost we have a very, very large amount of maybe $150 billion of waste in the logistics system. And of course, this is going to improve as GST and many other elements are happening. So yes, innovation is going to happen in a big way in the era of logistics. And this is on the back of the e-commerce, which is happening, on the back of lifestyle changes that are happening, as you rightly, product going to the consumer instead of consumer going to the product. But hub to hub movement is going to be very, very different. You will see road trains and a lot of stuff. So the future of mobility is in for a paradigm and tectonic shift, if I may say so. Yeah, I stop there.
Thank you, Mr. Bali. And just to add to what Mr. Bali said, I think a few points I'd like to mention. Most of us have heard of things like metaverse. And if we, when we think of technologies like metaverse, communication platforms and conferencing platforms would be dramatically different. All of us who are on this screen would feel like we are all sitting together if we were to be in a metaverse world. So there is, those kind of aspects which will actually make conferencing, business travel, all of that very different from what we've experienced. Healthcare is another area where I think, the use of telemedicine and remote diagnostics has today changed the way in which you can actually access quality healthcare. A poor person staying in a village need not actually be restricted to the poor quality healthcare, which is normally available in rural areas, but today can access good quality healthcare in a large city using telemedicine. And this is one of the areas where 5G will certainly work very rapidly on. We've all worked from home. And what we've also now discovered is that there are gig workers who are possible. And gig workers are people who are working for a certain purpose. So you give them a design contract or you give them an accounting contract, and they will do the contract and come to you. No longer will they be a full-time employee of yours, but they're contract-based employees. So you should be able to see that. All of us who work from home will understand that the future of work is not going to be work from an office, but it's going to be somewhere between work from home and work from an office. So that's another permanent change that I think we should be able to see. So, whether it's travel, whether it's in terms of communication, whether it's in terms of healthcare, whether it's in terms of technology such as, say, augmented reality or virtual reality, which can change the way we experience products, all of these are likely to see much more rapid advancement in the years ahead.
Thank you for your valuable insights, Mr. Kamal Bali and Mr. Biju Kurian. So we also have with us Professor GVR Prasad Raju, Vice Chancellor, Jawaharlal Nehru Technological University, Kakinad, with an eminent teaching experience of 30+ years to UG and PG students. As the principal, he played a crucial role in getting NBA accreditations for the eligible UG and PG programs, along with getting extension of UGC autonomy. 130 plus research papers have been published by him in reputed journals and conferences. We welcome you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, madam. And also, I thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity. I also thank the moderator, Professor Ravindranathan, and friends, manufacturing side, Kamal Baliji, and retail side, Kurianji, and banking side, Setiji. And my faculty, students, all a warm welcome to you all for this very, very interesting and important discussion on COVID, the innovation and the imperative. And one or two sentences on the university. It is a big technology university in the southern part of the country with 250 engineering and pharmacy colleges, including MBMC, or under the fold of the University, Jawaharlal Nehru Technological University, Kakinada. Around 2.5 lakh students are with JNTU Kakinada, will be taking care of examinations, academics, etc. We had a tough situation, particularly the pandemic situation, and no doubt it has given very clear-cut insight, particularly in view of technology development. We could receive so many challenges, and we are thankful to the technology who could able to solve those issues. The COVID-19 pandemic has upended nearly every aspect of life, from the personal, how people live and work, to the professional, how companies interact with their customers, how customers choose and purchase products and services, how supply chains deliver them. As all of you know, the COVID-19 has resulted in schools, etc., shut all across the world. Globally, over 1.2 billion children are out of the classroom during the last 2 years. As a result, education has changed dramatically with the distinctive rise of e-learning, whereby teaching is undertaken remotely and on digital platforms. Research suggests that online learning has been shown to increase retention of information and take less time, meaning the changes coronavirus have caused might be here to stay. Students should be given a space where they can freely express their concerns and doubts without any invasion. Here are a few effective methods to improve the student in his or her learning if applied in the right way. Active method, through interaction. Cooperative method, group discussions. The visual audio and kinesthetic learning. In the case method, this is a real effective teaching strategy that gives a promising outcome rather than simply teaching a new topic. Share with them a real life example with which they can connect it. Flipped classroom by following NPTEL courses, etc. Brainstorming. It is good to include some brainstorming sessions in the classroom also. Distributed practice, online tools, student ideas, practice testing, encouraging them in practical perspective, prompt feedback, time management, also results in improving the student learning, whatever the mode. Education is sometimes perceived as a sector which is resistant to change, while at the same time, it faces a crisis of productivity and efficiency. Innovation could help improve the quality of education as well as provide more bang for the buck in times of budget pressures and rising demand. Using data from international surveys, it finds that education is more innovative in some ways than other sectors, and that there has been innovation across all countries, particularly in teaching methods. It considers and skills, or rather what skills are needed to encourage innovation more widely in the economy, and whether schools and universities are helping students develop these skills under a pandemic situation. Some of the situations, as you know, the COVID-19 pandemic created a situation wherein both the teachers and students had to adopt a technology, not by choice, but as an essential requirement for the education system's smooth functioning. The adoption came with many challenges related to the lack of knowledge about the use of technology by both students and faculties, difficulty finding and selecting a suitable platform for online class delivery, cost of the license, and issues related to the infrastructure, unavailability of the internet in remote areas. This pivots the need for research from factors that affect the technology absorption to the factors that would affect the continued use of technology for blended learning and student benefit. Instead, research that can guide the behavioral change strategy for both students and faculties would be needed. Innovation education encourages teachers and students to explore research and use all the tools to uncover something new. It involves a different way of looking at the problems and solving them. The thinking process that goes into it will help students develop their creativity and their problem solving skills. The COVID-19 pandemic has significantly increased the need for new approaches, which we have discussed, to learning. The current situation is a perfect example of why an innovation strategy is so vital to educators. Innovation education is needed to result in successful learning outcomes. It affects everyone, including teachers, administrators, students, and parents. Importance of innovation education. Innovation in education encourages students and teachers to research, explore, and use of all the tools to uncover something new. Innovation involves a different way of looking at problems and solving them. It also improves education because it compels to use a high level thinking to solve complex problems. Examples of innovation education: competency based learning, video streaming, open curriculum, changing nature of faculty, changing revenue sources for institution funding, digital textbooks, 3D printing, use of data analytics. Trends in education in 2020: immersive learning through virtual reality, digital lessons personalized for each student, online games that teach important information while showing students that learning is fun. Trending in education in 2021. Online learning is the most popular educational trend for 2021. Of course, with the development in EdTech, this is now becoming possible on a large scale. Speed up by the pandemic, schools have been forced to experiment more with online learning. Innovation strategies, if you could name some. An innovation strategy is a common innovation mission and a detailed plan that aims to create new value for which customers are willing to pay. It includes a set of policies or behaviors geared toward achieving future organizational growth. Technology and innovative methods of teaching. The use of technology in the classroom helps to engage the students with different kinds of stimuli and creates an environment of activity-based learning. It makes the content of the classroom more interesting and makes learning fun. The role of technology and innovation. Technology plays a crucial role in educational innovation. Online learning has changed the way the teachers and students interact with one another, as well as how information is presented. As the types of technology used in education increase, so does the need to upgrade the systems to meet the shifting demands. The COVID-19 pandemic brings this requirement to the forefront of educational discussions, as the need to create the right innovation strategy is now more relevant than ever. Steps towards further innovation. Educators can take the opportunity afforded by the COVID-19 crisis to create new teaching environments. Students can gain new research skills by learning to use online databases and other resources in new ways. The online format also allows the teachers to meet the diverse needs of students. Different types of content can be used to address each learning type, so students can receive high quality education in a format that works best for them. Plan for the future. The key to a successful innovation strategy is planning. The adoption of new standards will allow educators to personalize the learning experience. As more coursework is moved to the cloud, more demands will be met. Schools are also changing the way they create assessments. As they continue to adopt their curriculum, they will need to find new ways of helping students access resources and quality instructions for longer periods of time outside the classroom. Outside the classroom, with practical examples, internship, relevance to the field, land to field, lab to field, and application-oriented studies. These are all really required for upgrading the student knowledge and skills. Video conferencing software enables educators to reach out to teachers and administrators in various locations to share ideas. Companies are also holding additional webinars and training events to help teachers find innovative ways to conduct remote teaching sessions. So we must ensure that the digital transformation gained during the COVID-19 pandemic continues instead of reverting back to the pre-COVID status quo. And I thank wholeheartedly the organizers for giving me the opportunity. And really, the technology, the university itself is a technology university, and we have utilized the technology for the sake of online learning to the students which are there in the remote area. And all the around 250 affiliated colleges, they have benefited out of the technology which was given by the university to the affiliated colleges. And now the situation is changed. Still, we are taking up very, very important activities only through online. And thank you all, the learned colleagues, and for the opportunity given to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable insights. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Sir, I have a question till the students warm up. My question is actually to Mr. Kamal Bali. Mr. Kamal Bali, the reason I'm asking this question is in your presentation, you just spoke about two eras, the pre-COVID era and the post-COVID era. And you brought out a lot of changes, the innovations that happened in the manufacturing industry. And one thing I liked was on the collaboration. You also came and spoke about how Volvo and Daimler coming together and creating some creativity, some new car. So I was hoping it is a very expensive car we can't afford, so I just left it till such time. Mr. Bijay Kurian came and he also spoke in the similar line. And one thing I liked was he made a repeated statement, this is permanent change that has happened. And followed by Mr. Prasad Raju, he also came back and spoke that there are a lot of changes in the education industry. And post-COVID, there are plenty of changes. I mean, I've just listed many. In the interest of time, I'm just not reading out. But my question is, if this is a permanent change, Mr. Kamal Bali, actually, can we expect maybe a Volvo, Daimler, and Maruti cheaper car, so that in the next 6 months we can plan to drive a high value car at a cheaper rate? Or it is in another 3 months, when if there is no COVID, all the changes what we have seen, this is just an illusion. We'll go back to our older time. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for that that query and that reflection. So let me tell you that obviously we talked about the era of collaboration, and I think by that I mean that obviously there are some compelling challenges which the industry and the various stakeholders need to solve, and therefore, for instance, the issue on energy or propulsion systems was to be addressed. So obviously the two top players in the world came together and said, okay, we will start working on hydrogen fuel cells, and both the partners, both the players put in $1 billion each to set up a joint venture called Cellcentric, which will manufacture hydrogen fuel cells for long haul transportation. So that was the context. But we will still continue to compete when it comes to the end product. So the propulsion system. So I think, as some of us have alluded to, there's clearly an era of collaboration, cooperation, and competition. So I think all of these three things will happen and will continue to happen. And I think all three are important. While collaboration will lead to new innovations, will need to break through technologies, and competition will lead to better value proposition for the consumer. So both things are very important. On one end, you have the best technologies, innovation. On other end, you have a great value proposition, because that will be the balancing factor for companies, as you rightly said, to bring in products which are affordable, which are value creators for the consumer. So I can assure you that this is really going to be, on a serious note, this is going to be the way forward, that you will have to be relevant to your consumer. And when I say relevant, you must deliver that value to the customer. Unless you deliver that value to the customer, that will be very, very difficult. But just on a lighter point, that is basically the sum and substance of my reply. But just to let you know that if you are talking about cars, about a luxury car, a cars which are more than 40-50 lakhs, remember that the GST on these cars is almost about 40%, 42% is the GST. So a lot of element of that goes into taxes. So that is why also the prices get inflated in some ways or the other. But to the long and short of the answer to you is yes. I think all of us are going to be tested. All of us will need to constantly innovate. And that is why I love the topic today, that how the imperative of innovation. I think innovation is going to be about everything. So therefore, if I were to summarize this whole thing, I think we all need to reimagine the future, reimagine our spaces in which we work. We need to organize for the future, keeping future in mind. We need to advance with agility, and we need to build to adapt, not build to last. We need to build to adapt. And finally, we need to digitize our core processes and our customer facing processes very, very clearly, to my mind. So I think that's going to be the journey ahead, in my view. Yeah.
Kamal Bali, I have a question.
In the light of Mr. Kamal Bali, I have a question.
Yeah.
In the light of the trends that you have projected in manufacturing industry and the innovations which are likely to happen in the near future, what would be the prospects for Indian manufacturing industry to create valuable jobs in the medium and long-term future?
Yeah, Ambassador Ravindranath, that's a very good question. And I think that is the biggest opportunity which I see as we speak, as per the latest, what I'm going to tell you is confirmed by the latest McKinsey report. Almost, see, if you look at the global manufacturing, it is about approximately $15 trillion. These are, I've got the numbers of 2020. So the numbers may have slightly changed. So almost $15 trillion of manufacturing output takes place globally. Out of this, 30% is today, or as on 2020, was controlled by one country, which is China, 30% of $15 trillion. And another 17% was actually accounted for by the US. So between US and China, almost 47% of manufacturing takes place in the world. Now, the good news is that almost $4 to $4.5 trillion of this is being rebalanced over the next 3 to 4 years. And this has already started. And we can already feel that almost $1.5 trillion has already moved out of some of these geographies, some of these jurisdictions. So it is expected that at least 20% of the shift can come to India, minimum at a very, very, I would say, realistic or pessimistic level, 20% of the shift. Even if 20% of the shifts comes to India, almost we are saying $800 billion of manufacturing can come to India over the next 3 to 4 years. Our current manufacturing is about $400 billion, which means our manufacturing would jump from $400 billion to $1.2 trillion. So that's a huge opportunity. If only 20% of this global rebalancing of global value chain happens, India can be a beneficiary to the extent of this number. Obviously, this is not going to come on platter. We will have to be competitive. We have many other competitors. We have Vietnam, Mexico, so many other countries. So I think that's one great opportunity for us in India. But obviously, we are a country of contrast. While we have some very competitive and futuristic manufacturing sector in India, we also have MSMEs who need to build their capacity, who are not ready to take these opportunities today. So we will all have to work at breakneck speed to ensure that we are competitive, we have capacity to deliver. And I think the future, to my mind, if we get our act right, the future is very, very positive and very, very bright for India when it comes to manufacturing. Our long-standing dream of manufacturing to become 25% of our GDP can actually be realized in the next 3 to 4 years. Today, we are at 17% of GDP. And for the last 20, 25 years, the needle is stuck at 15 to 17% of GDP being manufacturing's contribution. And if we really want to, and if this happens, we can reach 25% of GDP very, very easily. And once you reach that, because manufacturing has a huge multiplier effect, I think we can have a ripple effect and we can kickstart a virtuous cycle of growth for everyone. So huge amount of opportunities, but equal amount of challenges of upskilling, of tech industry 4.0, of so many other factors. Yeah.
Can I ask you a small question? A brief only. Sir, I'm very happy to hear that Indian manufacturing industry has a very bright future, and that global value chain getting disruption, India can take advantage. Good, sir. But what is your opinion, sir, regarding the recent divisive messages coming from those in power? And Kiran Majumdar I mean, she also said, this is not the time to create a, what you call a misconception that India is not so safe for foreign investment like. So I hope you understand, I mean, you remember what I'm talking about. I mean, India, this is the time when we should all be one, and there should be no wrong messages going to the foreign investors. What is your view, sir?
No, absolutely. I think, I mean, from the aspect of business, from the world of business and commerce, obviously, I mean, a country which is stable and which moves in the right direction is always a good for investors to come in. And I personally do not see any challenges on that respect as such. And I think we are fairly firm on that, in that direction. And I think we are, if we compare ourselves with the rest of the world, I think we are doing pretty well. And I'm sure we will continue to do well. Obviously, there are areas where we always need to improve, and I think we should continue to improve. That's all.
So thank you. One more question we have for you. Even as we agree that technology can help us in innovating to overcome the challenges posed by newly emanating crisis, shouldn't there be a change in the very ideology of human living on a very limited yet precious planet Earth? In this context, will industry in general compromise towards a modest, moderate growth in lieu of accelerated growth? Will be ready for a value-driven business instead of a catastrophic volume-driven business, so as to imbibe the values of sustainability or equitability?
No, absolutely. In fact, that is again a very, very good question. And I think it is not that whether industry is going to move in the direction of a sustainable future. I think industry has already committed to a sustainable future now. And therefore, that is why the era of innovations will really pick up. Accelerated innovation will pick up in a big way. Companies have committed to net zero greenhouse gas emissions over a period of time. And there are science-based targets which are already coming into play. Some companies, for instance, a company like Volvo, which actually we are using fossil fuel today, we have committed to become net zero on carbon by 2040. So I think that's something very, very interesting. 2040, we would be net zero when it comes to carbon footprint. And by 2030, almost 50% of our products will be completely would be working on zero greenhouse gas emissions. So I think that's one. And I think companies have taken that pledge, and this is going to be the way forward. And I think when it comes to ESG, when it comes to a sustainable way, which is when we talk of environment, society, and governance, they're also, when it comes to green finance, it's going to be based on certain parameters of ESG. And if companies do not follow that, they will be denied that finance. And I think that's going to be another very, very positive effect. So writing is on the wall that it's going to be a sustainable future. It's going to be, the direction is going to be sustainable, and we will all have to deliver on that promise, because you cannot take away from our future generations what is owed to them. So I think the whole world and industry is committed to that.
So good evening. This is Dr. Mercia. I have a question with regard to ESG, because you have been repeatedly talking about it, and I also believe in ESG. But then there are finance gurus who say that ESG is totally meaningless and it won't be a sustained trend of investment. So I would like to know what is your take on it. And the second question is with regard to collaboration, because both the speakers, Mr. Kamal Bali and Mr. Biju Kurian, both of you spoke about era of collaboration. While countries are collaborating, countries are fighting. How does that help the world? Would we be doing more damage to the world by countries fighting while companies are trying to collaborate? Because we see that in sustainable development goals also, one of the goals is to collaborate. But we don't see that happening when countries go on war.
I can take some bit of it, and I think Biju can take another part of it. But I think very, very clearly, when we look at automotive industry, which is one of the highest contributors of greenhouse gas emission today, that has taken a pledge. And if you see the world moving very, very quickly towards electric propulsion, about clean energy. So I think the E part of ESG is very, very clear, that the focus to environment, the focus towards environment is very, very clear. And the world is clearly moving towards that. When it comes to societal aspects of ESG, it's very clear that the future employees, all the stakeholders are looking at responsible companies. If you want a good talent, if you want to attract good talent, you will have a value proposition for talent which is welcoming. So it's very, very clear. That's the S part of this. To my mind, it's not that whether you should do it or not. I think you will be forced to do it. I mean, the market forces, the market parameters the stakeholders will drive you to be in that direction. That is my personal belief. Now, it may take 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. That's a different matter. So environment, societal aspects are going to be very, very clear. And governance is again the same thing. Various stakeholders, if they do not find transparency in your governance, more and more people will avoid dealing with companies and with institutions which are opaque in nature. I think transparency, ethics driven is, to my mind, going to be the future of the world. The second part of your question, whether the world is going to collaborate, whether there is going to be, yes, we are seeing some geopolitical tensions across the world. To my mind, these are instances which will continue to happen in the world. Let's agree, there is never a perfect world. There will always be aberrations. There will be few sectors where you will have some challenges, and this is currently we are facing some challenges. But to my mind, the future belongs to cooperation, collaboration, and there could be some amount of regional value chains so if companies and institutions want to de-risk themselves, so people might work on regional value chains as well. So this is, to my mind, my view, but I'm very, very clear on ESG that is the way, that's going to be the future. It's not whether it's going to happen or not. It's just a matter of when. It's going to be 2030 or 2035 or 2040. It's just a question of time, I think. And the market forces, the people will drive this to happen. Biju, if you want to add some thoughts.
Thanks, Kamal. And just add to what Kamal mentioned. I think when we should always believe that we are part of this world. We don't own this world. The land that we occupy on the world is only about 12% of the total amount of land available. And the balance is occupied by various other, living species and, things like trees, etc. So when we actually create economic wealth, it's important for us to make sure that we don't do this at somebody else's cost. And that is the reason why we believe that the environment is something that we have to influence, because it is our actions which destroy it and not the actions of an elephant or a tiger. So that's one part about it. The second is that consumers are also getting increasingly conscious and are getting driven by values such as, how responsible is a company, how much is it doing in terms of recycling, how much is it doing in terms of environment protection, is it being able to, deliver clean air and clean water, despite all the operations that there are in the factory. These are questions consumers are beginning to ask, because they say that for one company to make money, why should the rest of the people suffer? And these are values which are now getting increasingly stronger. And there are bodies which are trying to protect. And in that context, I think the fact that ESG as an agenda is now becoming stronger and the government is now mandating it from next year onwards, it's a very welcome step in making sure that all companies are responsible in their activities.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Thos, for reiterating the importance of ESG investments. Thank you.
Thank you to all our esteemed speakers. Now, I would like to request Professor C.P. Ravindranathan for his closing remarks.
Well, with that question as the last one, it is time for us to conclude this session. We are very gratified by the presentations made by all the three speakers, which contributed to a very instructive and rewarding discussion on the theme of innovation imperative in the context of COVID-19. There are many insights derived from these presentations on which all of us would do well to reflect, especially the possibility of creation of jobs in India, which is a matter of particular concern to all of us, particularly especially the students of business schools who are now going into the world of employment, looking at what that world will offer them, will have in store for them. Well, I would like to acclaim all the three speakers for their insightful presentations and leave the formal vote of thanks to the MC. Thank you.
Now, I would like to call upon Mr. Sebin for the vote of thanks.
This event would not have been possible without the founder of Exami and chairman of Exami Bangalore, Professor J. Philip, who has always strived to provide us, his students, with multiple opportunities to interact with industry stalwarts and business leaders. We thank Chairman Exami Cochin, Ambassador C.P. Ravindranathan, for always encouraging us and keeping the students of this college abreast with current affairs. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to the President of Exami Society, Mr. Anil J. Philip, for constantly motivating us and empowering students to push their boundaries and challenging the status quo. I would like to thank Dean Academics, Exami Bangalore, Professor Madhu Kumar, for always being so ever supportive and proactive. Last but not the least, I would like to thank our esteemed panel of speakers, Mr. Kaman Bali, Mr. Bijay Kurian, and Mr. Professor G.V.R. Prasada Raju. We were honored to be in your presence and hear you share your perspectives. Can we have applause for them? I would like to express my appreciation to Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce for their continued support and association with Exami. To all the guests and students present on the online platform Zoom and present here with us, you have been great. Thank you all so much. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, sir.